Okay, so I think I've finally cracked it. I now know how to become a professional artist, specifically the type of artist that I want to be. And I'm basically going to run through the blueprint of what I've discovered in order to do that, so that any aspiring artists can follow the journey or understand at least where I'm going and what I hope to achieve with this. So when you begin the journey, you know that you like art, or you like drawing, or you think you know you like drawing, or you're skilled at it more than you are other things. So that's your starting place. You sort of like, okay, I'm kind of an artist, I guess. You know, some people might have experience, some people might not have any, but the idea is you're a producer of art and you want to turn that into a career. There's a couple of ways to do that. There's either going down the employed route. For example, someone like me, I could work as a video game artist producing character designs, environment artwork, assets for video games. I could take on sort of more private commissions or public commissions, things like book covers or just people that want my artwork, basically. Or there's the idea of doing commercial types of illustrations. So maybe there's just some kind of industrial lab type thing and they need some illustration for their quarterly report or something. Commercial illustration, basically. Now, I realised that I don't really want to be stuck in a job where I have to do a 9 to 5. I want a bit more freedom. Commissions. Trouble with commissions is they don't pay very well, not private commissions, and you're kind of having to create other people's characters and artwork and things. Commercial stuff is it's just boring. The reason that I got into art or producing art to begin with it wasn't for these reasons. It was because I wanted to explore my interests. So I realized that in order to explore my own interests as an artist, I would have to sell my own artwork. So selling artwork, like selling it on prints and canvases, even products like t-shirts, mugs, things like that, I'm up for it. That's what I know I need to do in order to sell the sort of artwork that I want to create. Trouble is, you can't just create it and then it all works out. You need to market it. So selling art plus marketing, and then you can move on to the next step. And from there, it's deciding how to become the professional. There's a couple of different routes. You can either basically go to the be phenomenal route or become phenomenal. So you might be good at your craft, but in order to get to that sort of, the 1% echelon at the very top, the people who pretty much everything they do garners so much attention just because it's so good, like that is the route to get there. The next thing you could do, if you're not one of these rare, genius prodigies, is you could find a gimmick. So what does that mean? That basically means something like, imagine you were creating some good art, but perhaps it's not technically brilliant. Like, you don't need a really good understanding of anatomy and perspective and color theory. You can just copy an image that exists. You can copy a photo, for example, but maybe make that photo, instead of just taking a photo, you could make it out of buttons or pasta or some kind of weird material that's a bit kind of gimmicky, a bit different. Trouble is, if you try and find a gimmick, you could potentially deviate from where you want to be. So you might think, well, I don't care about buttons. I have no affinity to do buttons. I know I like producing artwork and I want to explore my interests. So let's just say that my interests were video games. It's like, okay, I know I like video games. I know I like producing artwork. I know I want to produce some artwork of, let's just say, a popular character like Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid, or Ryu or Ken from Street Fighter. I don't know, whatever. Imagine doing those, but maybe you could make the artwork out of insert gimmick here. So that's a possibility, at least. The other thing is, you're not good, so you realise that no one is coming for your art, or maybe you are good, but you're just not in that top 1%, or you don't have that quirky gimmick. So you need to find supporters. You need to really find people, not just that support your art, but that support you as an individual, that like your personality or your plight or where you're coming from. So in order to do that, you're going to need social media, specifically in-person video. I don't think you can really communicate enough about yourself these days, or people wouldn't expect that from anything other than videos like this one. I mean, all three of these things are going to require marketing. You can't really get away from it. So they are, marketing for the most part is social media. It can also be in real life social networking. So you don't necessarily need to do everything on the internet. You could maybe just go to art shows and market your artwork that way. That's an option. So it depends where you're coming from. The trouble is there's going to be a barrier to get to the next stage. So no matter which route you go to, the barrier that you're going to face is AI and bad actors. So AI, artificial intelligence, these days AI can basically produce anything that you can produce. Let's say you're an artist. They can produce, if it's 2D art, they can do that. They can make it as good as your artwork, or nearly, depends on what level you're at. If you're at a really high phenomenal level, you're highly unlikely watching this video. But yeah, AI for the most part can do anything that you can do in a 2D sense. So how are you going to beat that? The goal is to produce artwork, but the AI can produce artwork. Anyone now can produce artwork. Anyone could sell artwork. Anyone could sell artwork about their interest. You can prompt Midjourney or Leonardo or whatever to create, I don't know, a Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil, Street Fighter, whatever artwork in whatever style. And then you, as a prompter, can then go out and market it and stuff like that. And that is why, as an artist, you need a sort of defense against that, or you need to show that you're not cheap like that. And there's nothing you can do about people buying that kind of cheap, mass-produced artwork from AI. If people like the picture, they're going to like the picture, they're going to buy it. They don't really care. A lot of people just want cheap art because it's there and exists and they want to decorate the walls. And that, unfortunately, means way more than half of our artists trying to sell art are going to be out of a job within the next couple of years. It's just how it is. But I mentioned bad actors as well, because you're not only facing AI here, you're also dealing with people that are just stealing either other artists' work or images in general from Google and then just printing it on cheap products. Think of the sort of cheap crap that you get from China. Unscrupulous sellers on there will just get a load of images from somewhere. They don't care where it is. They don't care about the artist. There's no licensing agreements or royalties being paid for images taken. It's just been ripped off, stuck on cheap products made in China, sold to the masses through Temu, Shein, Wish, AliExpress, stuff like that. And that's another competitor that you have to deal with. And people are still just going to buy the thing because they like the picture. Let's just say there's a water bottle with a cool looking character on it, and they like that artwork. Maybe it's the same sort of artwork you would do. I mean, in my case, it is the same artwork. I've literally had Chinese sellers steal my artwork, print it onto products, and I've seen those products then for sale on sites like Amazon. That's going to happen. There's nothing you can really do about it. You can police it to some degree, try and get that stuff taken off, make it a little bit difficult and a little bit stressful to have to constantly put products out that are cheap, low quality and infringe on copyright, because you never know when you're going to get copyright strikes and banned from sites like Amazon or have your products removed, stuff like that. But it's still going to happen. AI is still going to happen. Bad actors are still going to be in the world. As soon as you create artwork that's worthy of being stolen, it will be stolen. So you can't get around that. What you can do to sort of bolster your sort of presence, I guess, and to sort of give yourself more value or credibility is post works in progress. So this is all stuff basically to, I'm going to say is to prove that you're a human. This isn't just me stealing an AI artwork and then claiming to be an artist. This is me showing the process, and that has value, or at least it proves that you're not just an AI or a bad actor. You can create traditional media, particularly if you're, in the sort of finding a gimmick and you're making character artwork out of buttons, for example. That's going to be made out of a tangible, real thing. An AI can't replicate it. I mean, it could replicate an image of that, but it can't replicate the actual art that you would then potentially want to sell. The other thing I'm thinking is just show your face, prove you're human. And like I was saying about the social media, the in-person video stuff, the idea is that, yeah, I'm a human being. I'm talking about my artwork. This is important to me. This is why it's important to me and why I want other people to find it important. And that message is going to be the thing that's going to sell the artwork. So if you can do all of that, then you can hopefully reach the goal, which is to engage in personal interests and become financially sustained. I mean, it's not necessarily that easy. And this whole process, it probably looks quite complicated. There's a lot of little, bubbles and arrows going on here. And the kind of process that I'm looking at doing, sort of producing art, selling art based on my interests and getting to the end goal, that is a lot harder than just finding employment as like an artist in a studio that produces video games or that is taking on commissions, because business, or good businesses, easy to create business, not easy, but easier to create businesses, generally rely on finding a gap in the market, identifying that gap, and then supplying something to fill that gap. It is difficult, really difficult, when you've got your own ideas, but they might not be filling a gap. Like if you really enjoy drawing chickens, you don't necessarily, there isn't a gap for chickens. I mean, there might be, but typically there's already chicken artwork for sale. There's, like, if I did a big scout around on the internet right now, I could probably find about at least 1,000 examples of chicken artwork that I could buy. So there isn't really a gap in the market there. It really is one of these weird professions where the business side of things, it is about forcing a business, is about convincing people that what you're doing is worth someone buying into. So the amount of sort of marketing that artists need to do in order to sell the artwork that they want to sell is just absolutely crazy. I mean, some people might not want to do chickens. Some people might want to do cats, cat portraiture. That's going to be a lot easier to sell. If people like cats, people like dogs, less people like chickens. There's some things that are just going to be a lot easier to sell. If you're a floral artist and you draw flowers, I mean, there's way more than 1,000 floral artworks that you could buy on the internet right now. So there's a lot of competition, but it is equally, like with something like sunsets or like a beach scene, it's something that most people that would potentially want some decorative artwork want to buy. So there's a much bigger market despite there being much bigger competition. It starts getting really difficult when the idea, or my idea specifically, is to create game or anime inspired artwork. And there's a couple of issues with that. Firstly, you've got the problem of people that game, people that read comics, watch anime, tend to be young people between the ages of let's just say 10 to 20, 25, that sort of age bracket. People like that don't have a lot of money. They don't own anything really. They're struggling. They might, at best they might be starting their first job, struggling to pay the rent. They just don't have the disposable cash. So for me, that's that's a really difficult market to sell to. You can do, one little observation is, you could do better if you are selling to that demographic, but they're more of a female demographic and more into the sort of, female demographic in general, since women tend to spend money on aesthetics way more than men, but particularly if they're interested in sort of cutesy things that can pull at their sort of need to, I don't know, gush over cute things. So I've noticed that this is just a bit of a trend where there are people producing artwork of perhaps, let's just say, the same quality as me. I might be completely poor and destitute, but they are, you know, rich and pulling in, you know, £1,000 per year. And I think, well, what's going on here? And it's the content. And they might even have more of it, but it's one of these things where if you put some content out and that content is resonating with the right sort of audience, and when I say right, it's an audience that it's an audience that not only likes it but has the means to purchase it. So this is another thing with florals and sunsets. You know, you can then start tapping into people in their 60s, 70s of retirement age that have, you know, they've accumulated wealth over the course of their lifetime, and they can drop £1,000 on a painting or £20,000 on a painting of a sunset. You can't really do that if you're selling characters, character artworks, unless perhaps you are in the sort of be phenomenal category. If you're phenomenal, you can do it. Yeah, and I've definitely known people that they just want to draw anime characters all day. There's a guy that I follow on Instagram, Omar Duggan. He used to be a comic book artist back in the days when, well, I was probably about 14, 15 years old, and I think the first time I saw his artwork was in a comic book series called Dark Minds by Image. It was the second series of comics. And back then, his artwork was all right. But over the last, what would it be, like 25 years or something, he's got really good, and he specialises now in drawing female characters from video games and anime. And they're good. And I don't know how long it takes him to produce one of these artworks. I would imagine 15 hours, maybe a couple of full-time days. And he sells them for, I don't know, I think it's about $1,500, something like that. So great. You know, he went to the sort of be phenomenal side of things and got really good and is able to sell artwork quite easily from what I can tell. And yeah, he's doing good things. I mean, I would like to own his artwork. I think it's amazing, but I don't know, that's kind of cash. We can't all be phenomenal though. This is the trouble. Most people, you know, just by definition, aren't going to be phenomenal. Phenomenal is reserved for the 1% at the top of the pyramid. What do you do when you're in the 99% beneath that? Well, you're going to have to find a gimmick, and the gimmick artists, they could potentially work, you know, the top 20%, and then the rest are going to have to find supporters. They're going to have to acknowledge that people aren't there for their artwork. You know, it's good enough to buy, it's good enough to own. It might not be the best thing ever, but they like the person, and if they like the person, then artwork can be made. So this is just a little conclusion I've come to so far as the journey. Like if I was to plan it out, this is kind of where I think I am and where I think things are going. So let me know what you think about that. If you find this interesting, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to find out more. I'm on a journey to become a full-time artist, and hopefully I will get there now that I have a blueprint of what to do. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.